Hey guys, today we're going to talk about coaching up the spiral. Now, one of the things that I mentioned, for a lot of my marketing before actually releasing this program was that one of the biggest trauma things that happens is when people try to reframe the client too quickly or get them to try and find the positive in something that was really traumatic. And that can cause more trauma than what the person started with. Because what essentially is happening in that moment is that the coach is trying to get the client to go from like shame or guilt or grief or fear or whatever, or anger or whatever, all the way up to like joy. And they're doing it in a space where the client just isn't ready for it, right? So they're like literally trying to get the client to go from the bottom of the spectrum to the top of the spectrum when they're not feeling it yet. Now, guys, if you haven't already, I'd highly recommend before you watch this class, actually go and watch the emotions class, the main emotions class, which we'll be doing in the live classes. And the reason why I do that is because I tend to get a lot of questions around emotions. So once we've had the questions around like the class around the emotions, then come and watch this one is how I'd recommend you guys watch this, because I think what you'll find is that you'll be able to see that the emotions help you to kind of know where the client is at, right? So if the client is down here in, shame, guilt, grief, fear, desire, our job isn't to try and get them to go up here too quickly. What we want to do is we want to try and get them into a space of like feeling where they are now and slowly pulling them up the spectrum. Right. So if they're sitting down there in shame, like deep toxic shame, they've done something they feel really shameful about, what we know about shame and what you guys will learn is that shame comes up, in a toxic form, when we believe that, we've done something that we shouldn't have done. But typically, if it's in a toxic form, it may not be real, right? So like, it might be that, you don't think that you should show up live on a Facebook Live and, share your business or whatever. And the deep-seated toxic shame reason behind that is because you feel like you're going to be judged by your family or whatever, because they've judged you once upon a time, back in the past, or, plenty of times back in the past. And so you feel like you can't go out there and, share your message, right? You feel like there's going to be backlash from that, right? So that's toxic shame, because the reality of it is like, you're not actually going to be physically hurt if you did that. Like if you went and shared that live, you might have a little bit of emotional backlash, maybe not, but there's no actual like evidence that it's going to physically like harm you. Okay, so if that was the case, I'd be going to the client, well, like, okay, well, what are you worried will come up? And it's like, oh, well, I'm worried that this family member is going to judge me. Okay, cool. And if they did judge you, how would you feel about that? I don't know, I guess I'd feel like maybe I shouldn't have, put that video out there, right? Introduce guilt. So we've just moved them up the spectrum a little bit. Okay, cool. So shouldn't have, shouldn't put that video out there because they may think something. And guilt is the emotion where we basically start to question whether we've crossed our own standards, our own way of being. So we might question ourselves, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe, that was out of line or whatever. So we start to feel guilty about it. And then I'd say to the client something along the lines of like, when were other times in the past where perhaps you've been made to feel like this, made to feel like something that you want to share, something you want to do wasn't okay? This is just an example of, what I might ask them. And then they might go into like grief, for example, right? So they might go into like, tears start, coming, and they're like, oh, when I was younger, this thing happened, and, when it happened, like, blah, 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 this is how it made me feel. All right, cool. And so, and they might actually experience like grief and fear at that point in time, because they'll be like, and I was too scared to, put myself out there again because, I'm scared that this will happen again. And, fear and grief, like it'll be kind of all playing out at once. And then you might get to a point where it's like, and how did you want that thing to be in that moment? Desire, how did you want it to be in that moment? Well, I really would have loved for it to play out like this, right? And are you not like a bit pissed off that it didn't? Yeah, I am. I'm really pissed off. I didn't deserve to be spoken to like this. La 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 la, right? Anger. Okay, cool. Like now we're getting somewhere. So it'd be fair to say in that moment that you deserve something better than what happened. Yeah, I did. Right. Okay, cool. And so we might coach on that for a little bit. And then, um, now that like we've kind of coached through anger, anger is about deserving and boundaries, right? So then we'd say, right, so you're not that little girl or little boy anymore. You're the adult now. So this is something that you don't need to be holding on to. And maybe you might do like timeline or deep state repatterning or something like that. Would use some sort of coaching tool that would help them to kind of, or inner child work or something like that to help them work through that. And then we'd kind of future pace them and kind of say to them, and this is just an example, like there's many different ways we could do this. This is just one example of it, guys. So just say we've future paced them and we've gotten them to look at like how it could be in the future now that they've let go of that and they're not that person anymore. And they might start to like step into courage, right? And so they've stepped into courage and, kind of like that sense of like neutrality where it's like, oh, this doesn't have the same sting, the same heaviness that it had over it before. And then you kind of go into, okay, cool. Like now that we've explored that, how do you feel about doing that live video? And it's like, and they might say, well, actually, now that I've explored all of that and I've realized that this isn't mine and it was something that happened in the past or it was tied to this person or that person, I kind of feel like now, like, I should be able to go and do this because, I realized that me sharing, I can't hold back my message and my power and my impact, in accordance with, how it makes somebody else feel, or like, how it's going to impact my parents and my family, whatever, because they don't have the same life as me. I don't want what they have in their life. I have a different, dream for myself. So I need to go out there and share my message. Like, right, okay. So then they've gotten to acceptance and right, whatever, right? And then I might ask them a question. So like, all right, you need to share this message and it's really important, it's going to help so many people. And they're like, yep. And cool, what if mum and dad like do come along or auntie and uncle do come along and, they say something about it. And then the client might come back because you remember we've let go and we've released all of the stuff and just be like, well, mum and dad might not ever understand it and that's okay. Like my job is to just be the impactful person I am. Awesome. So now we're at like love, we're at peace, we're at enlightenment, we're at letting go of like whatever else, that person might think and actually just allowing ourselves to be in a space of, knowing that we just need to do our thing and it's, not make it about everyone else, right? So you can see there how I've just like kind of coach that person up the spectrum to this place. We haven't gone straight to like, what if that was a good thing? What if it was there to teach you something? La la la. Sometimes we're not ready for reframes, like I actually had a moment like this yesterday where it was actually interesting looking at it. I had a moment of we hadn't had our nanny for like a couple of months and we're meant to finally have her to come because COVID and then holidays and whatever else. And so finally she's going to come and I was like, great, because I've got so much work to do. And then Zali got sick and I was like, ouch, like, finally, like, was expecting her to come and then that happened, right? And so first of all, there was a little bit of guilt and shame, right? Because there was a little bit of like, well, shit, like, I shouldn't be feeling like this. I'm her mom and, I should be handling this better, blah, blah, blah. And so I was speaking to my coach about it and I was like, oh, like, I kind of feel like really sad. So here we go. Because I told her what happened. She's like, how are you feeling about it? I'm like, oh, I feel a little bit sad because, I feel like I lost a day because sadness is about loss. And I feel like I lost a day where, I should have been able to like catch up on some things and all the rest of it. And, I just feel really sad. And I said, I also feel really angry about it. Like, it's been 2 months since we've had somebody to care for her. And she was like, right. And I was like, honestly, I don't feel like I'm ready to like work through it yet though. Like, I don't feel like I'm ready to, just accept like it was just a day and, it is what it is and whatever. And she's like, okay, cool. So like, just go feel it. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. So I did, like last night, I just felt it. Like I had a bit of a cry about it. I felt the frustration of like, bloody hell, like really needed, that support yesterday. And once I felt that, a lot of the feeling disappeared, because like I wasn't trying to run away from the feeling. I actually allowed myself to sit in the feeling, to feel it, which is what we do by coaching up the spiral. And then by doing that, there was a sense of like neutrality, like, oh, okay, it doesn't have the same sting anymore. And then, you know, allowing myself to rest last night, I woke up this morning and I was like, okay, cool. Like, it's all right. It was just one day. And in fact, actually, it's fine because Caleb doesn't have much on today. So I can actually catch up on a lot of the things I would have done yesterday today. It's all good. Right. And then because I could see that and I had like kind of that acceptance and reasoning with myself, you know, I've gone into a space of like love and joy and peace and enlightenment of like, oh, I get to share my craft today. You know, I get to go and record some videos that I know need to be recorded and that sort of thing. So I've coached myself up the spiral there. You know, I'm in this really expansive place now because of that. But that was kind of how I had to self-coach myself through this. So guys, I've kind of given you two examples there, how you can coach it with a client and how you can coach yourself through this, because trying to jump too far up the spiral too quickly, what it will do is it'll get you to go, you might get up there, but you won't really believe it, you know, so it'll be a false sense of like joy and happiness. Or, you know, when you kind of feel like you're down at the bottom of the spectrum somewhere here and you're feeling a bit shit and you're like, oh, maybe I'll go to the movies or I'll go out for a drink or whatever, you know, and I'll feel better. And then you get there and you're like, I still don't feel better. Why don't I feel better? Right? It's because it's avoidance of actually feeling all of these things, because you need to feel all of these things to get to the top part here. And it doesn't have to take long. Like, this is the thing, guys, is like, this can be like done within, you know, a conversation. So you can have this, you know, over and done with within like an hour. You can have this over and done with within like a day. Like, it doesn't have to take that long. But the longer that we resist feeling these things, acknowledging these things for what they are, the longer that we actually stay down here rather than working our way up the spiral, and feeling the things that we actually want to be feeling. Okay. And this is really important for you guys to know for yourselves, because as a coach, our biggest job is actually managing ourselves. And it's really important for you guys to know for your clients as well, you know, and to share with your clients as well, whenever you can kind of sense that they're trying to avoid feeling something. So guys, that's it. I trust that that has been helpful. If you have any questions, please do let me know. All right, bye for now.